And I don't know if it will or not, but we will. Perhaps not. Let me try this one more time. Once we're streaming, it says we're streaming to Instagram. Okay. Well, anyway, not sure if we are or not, but that's okay. Okay, let's do it. Looks like everything looks good. And we'll get started. All right. Okay. Today, our guest, actually, let me start that over. Today, our guest on the show is Brad Boeye with Buy, Sell, Build QC with Real Broker in the Quad Cities. Let me tell you more about Brad. Now, Brad Boeye is a dedicated third generation realtor and principal of Buy, Sell, Build QC. QC stands for Quad Cities with Real Broker, and he's excelled in the Iowa and the Illinois Quad City real estate market for 24 years. Brad holds the esteemed CRS, ePro, and GRI designations and has helped over 1,250 clients buy, sell, and build within the Quad Cities. Now, he personally holds an impressive sales record exceeding $400 million in closed residential sales. He has consistently ranked in the top 1% of agents in the U.S. by Real Trends America Best since 2014. Brad's also voted a Quad Cities Most Loved Realtor yearly since 2012. The last 10 years, Brad has consistently closed an average of 90 homes a year between 25 and 39 million annually. That's about a closing every 4 days or so. Amazing. Brad loves where he lives and enjoys volunteering and supporting many local community organizations. He's originally from Rock Island, Illinois, and he now resides in Bettendorf, Iowa. That's one of the Quad Cities, with his wife and his business partner, Andrea, and their Labradors, Ivy Grace and Ivy May. I love that. Anyway, find Brad on his website. Now I'm going to spell it because it's going to spell differently than it sounds. Brad Boeye is spelled B-R-A-D and then BOEYE.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. You don't have to memorize it. And also let's follow Brad on Facebook and Instagram, him and his team, which we'll have links to that in the show notes. So basically, we'll do that because it's too long to explain on the phone or on the thing, and everyone will get it wrong anyway. So go into our show notes, go to Facebook, go to Instagram, hit the like buttons there. Brad, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. That was quite the introduction. You know what that means, DJ, that I've been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
Longevity, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. 24 years is impressive. And also, too, I'd really love when we dive into kind of where you're at now. We're going to start at the beginning and go all the way back, but I would love to hear about how you're thinking about where we are currently in the sales or the market, the sort of the market cycle. You've been through this before. You've seen these kind of things, and we have a lot of agents who listen to our show who haven't, weren't around in the 2008 to 2011 times where things were a little different, but are struggling today. So I'm excited to hear your perspective on it and how you approach 2024, maybe give our agents or our listeners maybe a little bit of perspective there. But anyway, let's start at the very beginning because you have a rich history of real estate in your family. It's clearly in your blood. But tell me, let's go all the way back. Tell me how you got started.
Yeah, so that's one of those where you're always kind of asked that, like, what got you into real estate? Well, unlike a lot of people, I was in college and I was going to go to law school, that I wanted to be a politician of all things. And then about my junior year, I decided that, I might want to give real estate a shot. And the reason why was my grandmother was the very first female broker in the Quad Cities area back in 1954, if you can believe that.
Amazing.
So quite the history there, and a lot to be proud of there, which we can talk about a little bit later. But then, my junior year, I was like, I don't really want to go to law school, and let's try this real estate thing. So after my dad graduated from college, he then joined my grandmother, and they ran their own company in Rock Island up until 1992. And then we merged with one of the larger real estate companies in the Quad Cities in 92. And my dad retired when in 2007, so he had quite a long run as well. So real estate's always kind of been in the blood, and I've always enjoyed it. And I just looked at the opportunity as, hey, I mean, it's worth giving it a shot. And here we are, almost 24 years later, and I'm still in the business
It's amazing too.
and loving
I
it.
do well, you clearly do, and I think as a marketer, I always go towards these sort of special circumstances that surround an individual agent. And you get to say, by the way, guys, my grandmother was the very first female realtor in the Quad Cities. And I think that's a cool thing to be able to talk about because, yes, it doesn't necessarily mean much about you personally, but it's this connection to history and a connection to important history that I think I think is such a wonderful thing to continue. And congrats to your grandmother. I imagine that was a incredibly courageous thing to do back then because I can't
Absolutely.
imagine it was easy to be the first female realtor. Although who knows, maybe it was. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was very difficult actually. There's stories out there that I've learned from some of the older agents that worked at that company years and years and years ago. My grandma and dad's company, and one of them told me this story that my grandmother actually would at times wake up really early, go over to the client's doorstep, wait for them to leave the house in the morning, hand them their offer that she wasn't quite so sure that the good old boys club was giving the clients her
Oh,
offers. So
yeah.
she was quite the
Wow.
pioneer and a very, very tough woman, and just a great example and truly a pioneer. I mean, no question about it.
Just incredible. Well, cheers to your grandmother.
Yeah.
That is something I mean, I'm imagining, yeah, the good old boys, they don't want these women coming in, I'm
Not
sure
in
back then.
1954, and can you imagine,
No.
TJ, that if there wouldn't have been, you know, you had to have people like that in not just the real
Yeah.
estate industry, but all across the board that were willing to do that, that broke through. Can you imagine not having women in the real estate business now? I mean, I just look
Crazy.
at that, and they're a huge part of our business, and it was because of you had pioneers like that. I mean, I'm very, very
Yeah.
proud of her. Very
Who
proud.
made it okay for everyone else to do it, and not only okay, so like, hey boys, step aside, we're coming in.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
they did, and there's more women in our industry now than men,
100%. Yep.
which is one of the cool things about our industry is there is certainly not as much of the anyone can sort of make it in our industry, which I love. There's not as very much a meritocracy, I think. So
Agree.
yeah, so let's talk about well, let's start with right now because I am interested in we're at the beginning of 2024, we're coming up to the end of January, and I'm interested to sort of talk to you about and get your perspective on how do you see the market? I'm here in Chicago. There's always transactions going on, but our activity has slowed considerably, or
Sure.
about 30% down year over year, which is probably no surprise. That's probably consistent with a lot of other markets. But I'm curious to think of, to know what you're thinking about for this year, and if you're making any changes to your business to account for any, abnormalities or challenges in the market.
Yeah, yeah. When I was younger, I was 22 years old when I very first got in the real estate business, and I looked like I was probably 18. So it was, I've seen all different kinds of markets. When I got into the business, it was an extremely strong market. That run from 2000 through 2008, 9 was incredible. But when I was 22 years old, I had to do different things. So I was under the impression that I was going to be able to move back to the Quad Cities and I was going to just light the world on fire and it didn't quite work out like that. It was that, oh, yeah, you've got a good family name, but what have you done? And it
Right.
almost made it harder, right? I mean, so
Oh, yeah,
uh,
sure.
it really did. And at the time, my dad was the president of our company. And I mean, he's always been one that you have to earn your way. So I was expecting to get some referrals from him. Well, that wasn't happening either. That, he also had 300 plus other agents that he had to take care of. So
Amazing.
in terms of how it's kind of changed over the years and what we're doing now. So back when I got in the business, of course, it was print advertising, right? I mean, that was the
Yep.
big thing. Like you had to be in the newspaper. When I got into the office at 22, 23 years old, I remember that I was at my desk and there was this elderly agent that walked up to me and it said, "What are you doing on your laptop?" And I said, "I'm looking up listings in the MLS here." And she said, "We've got MLS books back in the conference room there." And I said, "No, no, no, it's all online now." She goes, "Oh." And she said, "But let me tell you something. This is a people business and you don't need that thing."
Yeah.
And she was right about one thing. It's a people business. However, you need the technology. So to answer your question, so we've gone from print advertising to the World Wide Web, went crazy after 2000, and every year it just keeps on growing and growing and growing even more. So how we've adjusted over the years is we have gone from print advertising into getting a strong email campaign to like getting onto email. And then in 2007, I joined actually Facebook, and my wife said, "Hey, I think we should get a business page," which that was the year that my wife joined me in real estate. And I said, wait a second. I joined as a personal. That's like one of those where you just post about what you're doing, right? She said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but it can be good when you do it with your business too." And I said, "Okay, let's try it." So we ended up doing that. And now I look back and, always trust your wife, right? Um, you we started that in 2007, and if we wouldn't have done that then, we would have been left in the dust. So it's one of those where you're always evolving, always growing. And nowadays, we're into social media, so it's so important now that you're on social media, like really Facebook. Now we're into Instagram. We're My nephew's 24, so he's trying to get us more into TikTok and stuff like that. So in 2024, I really think that's important, that you have to get out there. And if you're not meeting people face to face, which is still the most important thing, you really, really have to be on social media right and left, and you have to be out there. In terms of adjustments of what we're doing this year, um, I really think that's the biggest thing that we're concentrating on, is getting back to the basics. And I've learned that in 2007 through 2009, that's when we really took off. And the reason is we already had longevity and a name back then. So I really feel that when the market tightens up a little bit, that's when the general public runs to the top agents. So that's why it's important that even if you have some tough years, stick with it. That longevity does mean something in this business for sure.
100%. And it also means you have wisdom. And
Yeah.
wisdom is something that, and I don't even mean that as a joke, although I know it sounds
Yeah.
funny, but it's actually really important because it allows you to have more awareness of the past 24 years today,
Yeah.
where you're able to say, oh, I've been through a high interest rate cycle, I've been through low inventory, I know what this is like, I know how to get you through this, and
Yeah.
it's not your first go around. But let's talk about that a little bit. So interest rates, of course, are higher
Yeah.
than anybody would love, but we got spoiled with the 3% days of years ago. And sadly, our clients still remember those days. And also, we just don't have a lot of incentive for people to move if they are under one of those wonderful rates from years back. And it becomes difficult to, I know here in Chicago, we just don't have that much inventory right now. And of course, interest rates have come down a bit, but are you dealing with these issues as well? And if so, how are you sort of counseling your agents to, really continue to be productive despite these things they can't control?
Absolutely. And I've always said that you can't control what you can't control, right? And one of those is interest rates, and another is inventory. I mean, there's no question about it. So the total numbers here, they're down. I mean, there's no question about it in the Quad City area. However, right now is a great time to buy that I truly feel from a lot of other podcasts that I've listened to over the past couple of months that rates are most likely going to drop in 2024. Of course, I can't make any guarantee, but when the rates do drop, that's going to make the real estate prices go way up again. So
Yeah.
right now is a great time to buy. And one of the advantages I have that I've been in the business for 24 years is when I got in the business back in 2000, DJ, this is what the rates were. They were 7%, and it was a
Yeah.
great market. And
Yeah.
all the realtors, when I joined, talked about how great the rates were, that a lot of them were around in the early 80s when they were 20-ish%. So
Yep.
you just have to explain to the agents and to the general public that in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's not 2.75, but they're not ridiculously high rates either. So, but that's the narrative that we have to help with. And at some point, they're going to drop again.
Of course, I was just at a market outlook here, and we're lucky enough to have the National Association of Realtors just happen to be in Chicago, and so we get to when our local association does events, we get to kind of it's actually in the same building as the National Association, so can go up and bother some of the bigwigs at NAR, and we got the chief economist, Dr. Lawrence Yoon, for NAR to speak, which is always like a big deal, and he said, I think rates are going to, and he's the guy in the country for real estate predictions, and he's like, I think we'll get down to like mid six, maybe low six by the end of the year. He goes, but I don't know. He goes, that's just my best guess. And he had a lot of data to support that. But even he was like, meh, we'll see what happens. But you're right that historically rates are not that high. And also, more importantly, yeah, would you like to have a 2.75? Sure. But what would you have paid for a property when rates were
Exactly.
2.75?
Yeah.
You might have paid 50 to 100,000 or more over asking, which you wouldn't probably pay today. So I think you're right. Having those conversations about, look, it's kind of like waiting for a stock to do really well before investing. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You want to wait. You want
You
to wait
can't ever
until
time that.
you
Yeah.
can't ever time it, and also it's just not the right time. If you are trying to time it, you're going to want to try to get in at the bottom. So this is the conversation I think that you can use a lot of stats and data from to say, well, let's just look, if we were looking back in the 2.9 interest rate days, let's see what some of the places that you might have looked at back then, what they sold for. And then the person will be like, oh my goodness. And again, it's that date the rate, marry the house sort of idea,
100%. Yep.
which I just love because it's so true. It's so good. I'm glad to hear that you're encouraging people to have these conversations. And because I run into a lot of realtors and even our own agents, we have about 800 here at our company. They're just bummed. They're bummed about rates. They're bummed about inventory. And I'm like, no, you guys don't understand. This is a great opportunity to talk to people about it. Because if you explain it, you're obviously going to be in a better position to hopefully help them. But yeah, let's talk about embracing change. You talked about sort of the move through technology, but
Yeah.
always keeping this as a people first business. So talk a little bit, if you can, about sort of how you approach the people side of it. How what are you doing to stay in touch with your sphere? What are we doing to continually, be in their lives, even in between transactions?
Yeah, and as you know, the older you get with your sphere of influence, that it's harder to stay in touch in person, right? So that's why social media is just so huge. That I listened to a podcast that was so true that if you're on social media all the time, they're going to recognize you. They're like going to remember you, and it's like going into a coffee shop where somebody's in the back corner of the coffee shop every day,
Yeah.
and every day that you walk in there, you see that same person. All of a sudden, over time, it's almost like that person, right? Like you would almost go up and just talk to them. So it's kind of the same deal with social media, but to really kind of grow the brand and to stay current, we like to uh, go to classes. We like to educate ourselves on what's going on in the current real estate market. So when I very first got in the business, I would go to the National Association of Realtors conference every year with my dad, which was great. So I learned a ton there. And then I learned about a ton of these great speakers, which we have it so much better now that once you hear one of these great speakers, there's podcasts, there's,
Yeah.
websites that you can go listen to these people. And the best part about getting out of town is that you can learn so much off of these other realtors too, that the ones who are in town might be a little tight lipped about what they do. But when you go to these conferences,
Oh, that's a good
they
point.
they just tell you everything, that they don't
Hmm.
care that you're not their competition. And I've always been one that, hey, this is what I do. You're more than welcome to learn off of me. I have no problem with that. If you want to copy off it, go ahead. And it's that you can tell people what to do all day long, but it is, are they actually going to do it? So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, so that's what we do. And we've learned a lot of things over the years. I mean, we started off with, I remember one of the uh, deals that we did to stay in contact with clients was that we always had a client party every year. And that was wonderful. What we do now, another example is we do twice a year, once in the spring, we drop off plants to our clients, and then in the fall we drop off mums. And I can't tell you the return on that.
Oh, that's
People
great.
love it. And I was laughing with Andrea. I said, this is taking me so long that I'll ring the doorbell and they may or may not be home, but if they're home, almost every time they want to, they really want to chat with you. They also want you to come into their house to see all the improvements that you've made as
Sure.
well, or that they have made as well. And it just, it's one of those things that when they go to sell their house again, guess who they're going to call?
Right. Yeah.
So
I love that. And yeah, moms are a great one. People in if any listeners of ours that live in the Dallas area, moms are a huge thing for high school kids for homecoming. It's a whole thing. But outside of that, I feel like moms aren't as popular, and that's a really unique way of staying in touch. And everybody loves. Well, I don't know. I would love getting a plant. So I love that idea. I love the idea of getting things like that, and just going and visiting in person. I think there
absolutely.
there just isn't there aren't many professions where people get to do that, right? Your attorney's probably not going to show up on your doorstep.
Nope.
Your accountant probably isn't. Dentist, all these other professions, service professions, really just they don't get to do that. And I think you're so right. So that's
Well,
wonderful that
and
you.
we're lucky that everybody loves to talk about the real estate market too, right?
Yeah.
Like people don't like to talk about, uh, subjects that aren't current to them, right? But their home value is always current. Like, you want to become kind of like the market expert in your social circles, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the biggest thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just staying in contact with your sphere of influence is huge.
It was funny when I was at this market outlook just last week. Dr. Yoon said, he said, now you know what? Everyone's having a hard time, meaning agents. This is a tough time. He goes, here's the good news: your clients who you've serviced in the last 3 years love you because their homes have all gone up in value.
He's
And he's
right.
like, and he's right. And I had even kind of forgotten that, and I'd said, oh my gosh, he's so right. He said, yeah, we're all bummed out because of the rates and everything, but everyone who bought in the last 3 years is probably pretty happy.
Yeah.
So that's a great time, like you said, to maybe, when you're dropping off a gift or just checking in with somebody, say, hey, would you like an updated, appraisal or not appraisal, an updated
Market
CMA?
analysis. Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Updated comp. And again, it's always fun to give good news to people. And then also then to be able to have, hey, your home has appreciated X percentage or X amount, would you ever consider selling? Because everyone's got a sale number, right? I was talking to one of the top producers here in Chicago recently. She has a beautiful, beautiful home. And she says, I'm never moving. And she goes, well, if they offered me X, I would move. And I just realized, oh, everybody's got that number.
Of
So
course.
it's kind of a fun thing to be able to talk about, even in more of a fun way with
Yeah.
clients. Like, I know this is your forever home, but if it ever gets to this level, would you actually want to move? But those are the
100%.
conversations you can have when you
Yeah.
show up with a mom, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly right. So I had one that he literally told me that we're like getting to the point. They live in a two-story house. They're about 70 years old. And they said, we'll be calling you in the next year or two that we need to downsize. So you always say, or you, not you necessarily, but the general market says that, hey, nothing's happening. And that's just not true. You always have ones that want to downsize. You always have ones that are running out of room in their house and they need to upsize. You have ones that want to buy rental property. You have ones that are getting married. There's a lot of examples. There's always activity going on in the market. So you just have to allow yourself to understand that. And those are the people that you're going to be getting the calls from.
Agreed. Let's talk a little bit about branding because branding is so important. And the way that I think about branding is, you know, well, at least if I were to want to develop a brand, the way I would think about it personally is, okay, what kind of feelings do I want my clients to have when they work with me, or what kind of experience would I like them to have? And then I would sort of work backwards from there. And you have this rich history of your father, ran a huge brokerage, your grandmother, obviously a pioneer. You are running a very successful team. How do you think about branding, and what are you doing to sort of maintain your brand?
Yeah. So branding is all about awareness, right? You want people to know that you're in the real estate business. So when I first got in the business at 22, how I branded myself was everybody that I knew, everybody that I ran into, I let them know that I was in the real estate business, right? So
Yep.
then I went to a training and they said, hey, you need to get a logo. And I mean, this is 24 years ago, 23 years ago. And I'm like, ooh, okay, that might be expensive. How do I do that? And they said you don't have to make it complicated. Just get something that defines who you are. So, like you mentioned, we've been in the real estate business since 1954. So we started off with a logo that kind of combined the past and the present. So we used our old company logo, but modernized it. And that was our first real good logo, I thought, where it was almost like, okay, I recognize that name. Oh, he's a part of that family. And that was the very first step of kind of taking off. My wife and I had a conversation one night, and she's like, you should be doing, and this is when she first joined me in real estate. So we were just engaged, not quite married yet. And she had said, you do pretty well, but you should do a lot better. And I was like, okay. I mean, I was selling at the time. I was single in 2005. I was 27 years old. I was selling, 5 to 7 million a year. I thought that was pretty good. But she said that, which resonated with me, is that now that you've been doing this for quite a few years, you have a name that can get you into doors that a lot of people don't have. And I always look at that as that was kind of the turning point where you don't necessarily have to have a name, you just have to have a brand.
Yeah.
And you have to think about what defines you as a person and run with it, right? I mean, that's really the biggest thing. So over the years, how we've grown our brand. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, DJ, but I would say, it really took off in about 2007 once social media got really out there. But before then, I got involved with the Quad City Chamber of Commerce, and they had a YP group here.
Yeah.
So you had to be under, I think, 35 or 40 years old. Great opportunity to meet younger people who were all looking for business, right? I mean, that's the reason why you were there.
Yep.
We went on a Cubs rooftop trip that the Quad City Chamber kind of did, and we were on a bus ride for 3 hours over there, 3 hours back at the Cubs game for over 3 hours and just had a great time. I met more people on that trip when I was 22, 23. And a lot of those people are still today are our repeat clients. So you
Yeah.
never know where that's going to come from. But I would say get involved,
Yeah.
start to build your brand. I do the Rotary Club here in town. And it's never about what you're going to get out of it. It's what you put into it. And you don't want to go there expecting business. That's not why you're doing it. But the end result is you get business. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way that it is. And I've been involved with our local hospital too. I'm on a committee there, so that's the face to face branding. And then also at our church I'm very involved with that too. So you just want to give your time back to organizations that you're passionate about too, and then you do get a little business off that, but it's name recognition and just growing that logo. Social media, I keep saying that, but it is humongously, it's huge. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to be out there and you have to be visible to people. I mean, that's really the biggest thing to keep growing the brand.
It's funny. I liked your social media. I want to go back to volunteering in a second, but
Yeah,
I liked your social media analogy earlier about going into a coffee shop every day and seeing the guy in the corner. And just at some point, even though you've never spoken to him, maybe you're like, I know that guy, or at least I'm
exactly.
comfortable with that guy. And maybe one of these days I'll go over and shake his hand and be like, hey, I see
Yeah,
you every day. Who are you? And, in a much more friendly way, of course.
yeah,
But this idea of being like, hey, like we see each other every day. Like,
yeah,
what's your name? And that's what you're right. Social media does allow for that same exact kind of
yeah.
interaction. So I agree. And the volunteering thing, as you were mentioning, I was really thinking about this. It's such a win no matter what happens, because not only will you likely feel good about, of course, being of service and contributing to your community and this particular organization that whatever it is that you're passionate about. So there's always just a lot of self-esteem and good feelings
Mhm.
there, and you may get some business from it, and it gets to be something that people associate with your
Absolutely.
real estate business. It's like, yeah, he's a businessman, he's a real estate guy, and look at all the stuff he does for the community. He's involved with a hospital, he's involved with different organizations, and he's supportive of that. Those are very admirable qualities that we all aspire to. Not all of us have time to do as much of that as we would like, but boy, we admire it in others when we see it. So and again, I know you're not doing it for that reason. You're not doing it to be admired, but it is admirable to do those things. So I think there's no real other than the amount of time and energy putting into it. That's the cost, but the results are, I think, a win all the way around.
It is. I mean, you like get to be a part of something that's larger than yourself, right? I mean, that's really the big thing. And you want to just pick something that you're passionate about,
Yeah,
and it's going to show. And you're like going to meet other people that are like-minded like you. And guess what? They're probably going to do business with you. Once
they
again,
need to
not the
live
reason
somewhere too.
exactly, not the reason why you do it, but they know you. I mean, that's really the big thing. And yeah, no, that you're exactly right about that, DJ.
And when it comes to this, I want to learn. I want to talk a little bit about studying the market. I don't talk about that much on the show because I'm a marketing guy. I think a lot of branding, marketing. I don't talk as much about staying on top of actually your market numbers and your stats and really knowing what's out there and inventory and all of that. How important is it that you are completely up to date on, are you looking at the MLS daily, regardless of whether you're slammed with clients or not? How are you keeping yourself abreast of what's happening in the Quad Cities?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of old school, that I literally every day, probably 3 to 4 times a day, log on to the MLS and I scour through homes just to see if any of them could be a potential fit, for any of our clients. And I know there's all of these, drip campaigns. There's all these great programs out there, which we do use those too. But there's something about when the agent calls the buyer and tells them that, hey, did you see this new house? They know that you're working for them. And
Yeah.
that's one of the big things is I'm always almost, and I know it's impossible that you can't be perfect, but when I have a client call me and say, "Hey, I really want to look at this house," I'm almost mad at myself that I didn't know that house was on the market. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, you always want to educate yourself in the current market, and when you're looking every day at what's new on the market, you know what the market's doing too, because you're looking at active listings, you're then looking at pending listings, closed listings, so you know what's going on in the market. uh, Going back to being new and the market too, when I got in the business, I went on realtor tour, which I know is not real popular in a lot of areas, but they still do it here. I went
Yeah, we do
every
'em here too.
Tuesday, every
Yeah.
Tuesday. And the reason why was that was a great way to learn the market. You can look at houses online, but when you're actually in them, you can learn what the values are a lot easier that way. So, yeah, I mean that's one of those where I'm always trying to constantly educate myself on the market and stay up with what's going on. That we're kind of lucky here in the Quad Cities too, that nationally they have a lot more highs and lows. We typically don't have quite as highs and we don't have quite as lows. So we kind of go in this little deal like this. So I always say that when you're in the Quad Cities, that it's a pretty good investment. That we may not go up 50% like some of the markets did in 2020 2021, but we're going to stay pretty steady over time, which
Yeah.
is good long term. So yeah.
100%. I also think too, yeah. So going to your broker opens, we call them broker
Mhm.
opens here, but I don't know what they're called everywhere. But the idea of going on broker tours also gets to introduce you to other agents too, right? And you get,
100%.
you've
Yep.
been in this business 24 years, so we talked about, of course, relationships with your clients, how important it is to maintain that, but also maintaining relationships with other agents, and of course, lots of personalities
Absolutely.
there at play. But how important is it for you to have good relationships with other brokers so that when you are working on a deal, you're trying to cooperate on I always say, remember, it's cooperative or commission, but the idea is
Yeah.
knowing somebody for a period of time, knowing sort of how they operate and having a good relationship. it I'm assuming it probably helps with some of your offers. If you come in with an offer that's exactly the same as Mr. Brand New Agent who just passed his exam, maybe oh, we know Brad's been doing this forever.
Yep.
Maybe Brad gets the deal. Can you speak a little bit to the importance of that? Good relationships.
It's
Yeah.
huge. Reputation's everything,
Mhm.
right? So it's we just had one last year where that's what we were told was that we had almost identical offers, but we knew it was your offer and we knew that this was going to get to the closing table. And it's over time you want to build that reputation. I always say we got to take the people out of the problem, right? So you want to concentrate on the problem and you want to get a resolution in every real estate transaction. Somebody has their house on the market, somebody writes an offer on it, right? The goal here is we've got a we've got a seller that wants to sell, we have a buyer that wants to buy. It's our jobs as the agent to get it to the closing table where we're representing our clients, however not making it adversarial. And it's very important that you stay calm during the real estate transaction and remember to take the people out of it. Let's resolve the problem and let's just get it to the finish line so everybody's happy. And I realize in every real estate transaction, not everybody's happy. However, most of them they are, that they were able to obtain the house and then the seller was able to sell the house. So at the end of the day, they're generally happy that way. So it's relationships are everything though. And it's how you treat other agents. I don't care if you just got in the business or if you've been in for 25 years. I'm always going to treat you the
Yeah.
same. But I will say, to your point, if I get an offer out of an agent that's very, very good, and I know they're very, very good, and they're very organized, and we're probably going to take that
Yeah.
offer if they're identical
Sure.
offers.
Yeah, because that agent can get it to close. You probably know the lender as
100%.
well. There's just it's
Exactly. That's a big deal too.
it
Yeah.
is, and
Yep.
so it's funny. It is this idea of you kind of have to play nice in the sandbox with everybody,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and, and it
Absolutely.
only just really benefits everyone involved. So I couldn't agree with you more. I just wanted to, you said something at the beginning. I just want to sort of touch back on for any of our agents,
Mhm.
sorry, any of our agents, well, any agents at ours that might be listening, but also just all of our listeners. Brad said something that, when he was 22 and got in, he made a list of everybody he knew and he goes, I better tell everybody I know that this is what I'm doing. Now,
Absolutely.
of course, Brad's this year is really his family history is celebrating their 70th year in real estate. I just did the math. I was like, oh my God, it's been their 70th year this year. So that's obviously very cool. Not all of us are going to have that. In fact, very few of us will have that, but we all have the opportunity to reconnect with our sphere this year. And I think it's a great way where if you never did that, like, hey, by the way, guys, I'm a realtor, let's think about our sphere this year and really, building deeper relationships with them. And that may mean reconnecting, may mean reminding everybody that you're open for business. But it's not something I think that you just have to do once. But I think most people don't even do it once. I think most agents never really do that. What Brian Buffini would say, send handwritten notes to everybody saying, hey guys, I'm open for business. I think most agents never do that. And I think even if you just send out 100 notes and you're newer, you're probably going to get a deal or two out of those 100 notes. I'm
Agree.
curious to get
Agree.
your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. Handwritten notes are always great or if they've like got a s- son or daughter that's into sports, let's say, or they're really good at academics, and you like read that they had this huge accomplishment. Write a handwritten
Yes.
note that, hey, I saw so and so, and I used to say in the paper, but I don't really read the newspaper anymore, but online, and what a great accomplishment that is. And you do it, everything you do in this business, if you do it straight, really from the heart, that's
Yeah.
huge. So handwritten notes are great. Another thing I've done that if I haven't seen a client for a really long time is I just ask them to go out to
Yeah.
lunch. Just
Yeah.
for a quick lunch, kind of really catch up. Or if you're into golf, ask them to go out and play golf. I mean, there's so many opportunities that you can get that personal face to face, because I don't know what the stats are. You probably know better than me, but it's amazing how many people don't use the same agent as they did last time, but they were completely happy with that agent. And the reason is they're out of sight, out of mind. And you want to be front of mind awareness with your past
So it's
clients.
funny you asked that. So at the conference I was just at last week, Dr. Yoon actually spoke to this, and he said, "Here's the good news: the National Association of Realtors does this study every year to say, how'd you find your agent? They survey a lot of homeowners and buyers and sellers. And anyway, 85% of the people surveyed last year said, I would love to use my agent again. But we know that a lot of people don't end up using the agent again because, of course, the agent
That's right.
loses touch with them and doesn't continue to do the people stuff. And
100%. And I mean, that kind of goes back to it too, is social media, like at the minimum, I keep saying social media, but it's huge, right? I mean, just at the minimum, do video. People love to watch video, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Gosh only knows that I'm not perfect on these videos, but just a quick little story there too, just about how to reconnect with your sphere. We went to a conference in 2000, I don't know, 19 or 20. No, it would have been 19. That 20, there weren't a whole lot of conferences. um, but we went to a conference where they said, do video. Like, that's how you can get back to your sphere. And one of them was this every Tuesday to do what we call take a tour
yeah,
Tuesday. So I would do a video tour of a brand new listing that I had, and we would do this every Tuesday. And when we almost every Tuesday, when we wouldn't do it on a Tuesday, I would have people out of our sphere email me or text me, or when they ran into me, where was Take a Tour Tuesday at? So I mean, just get on the video and just be your real
love it.
self. I mean, that's really the big
Well,
thing.
I would also like to encourage any of our audience who is a realtor in the Quad Cities area. If you feel that your current brokerage maybe isn't meeting your needs, maybe you're looking for more training, more support, more branding help, just help to grow your business, and you want to explore other options, this is the year. 2023 and 2024 I think are going to be well, 2023 we know was a big year for agents moving. So if you are feeling like maybe I should see what else is out there, Brad and his team would be honored to learn about you, to see if you might be a good fit. So Brad, if there are any of our listeners who, and I also want to mention, we're going to talk about this and then one other quick thing, because Brad, a lot of his clients are probably, as they get older, they're going to possibly move from the Quad Cities, maybe go somewhere warmer. And so we want to also talk about maybe building referral relationships with Brad. But if you're an agent in the Quad Cities right now, and you want to explore Brad and his team, you probably already know Brad and his team. But if you don't, Brad, what's the best way where they could reach out and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about you guys?
Yeah, you can go to our Facebook page anytime. So it's Bowie Realtor Group, or you can go to Instagram at Bowie Realtor Group, or you can email me at bbowie, like my name, at
And Bowie is
bradbowie.com.
spelled B
And
O,
love to hear
yeah,
from you.
Boeye. We
OEYE.
will have links, guys. You don't have to
Yep.
remember any of this. We'll have links to it in the show notes. Brad is really easy to find. His website's bradbowie.com. You can find him there as well, he and his wife. His wife obviously wasn't on the show today, but I got a good sense of how accomplished and how just how amazing she is, because she got us up and running today. And so cheers to your wife for helping
Yes.
us. She is amazing as well. So guys, it,
She's what makes this run.
and she took you from five to, I meant to mention this earlier, and I sort of did
True.
but didn't, is, she said, hey, you were doing 5 to 7 million and now you're doing like
Yep.
40 million. So in a relatively short period of time. So this is a team that is on the move. They are working together. Your nephew's on the team. It's a really neat, the family history is so nice and cool. And Brad and his team would be honored to talk to you again. No promises, of course. They're going to look for a certain type of agent, but if you think you could be of value to them, and maybe they would be able to be of value to you as well. And if you're an agent outside of the Quad Cities, which 99% of you listening probably are, well, maybe you're in an area where people from the Quad Cities retire to, or maybe you just move to, and Brad is going to have referrals, to send out when his clients, maybe make that shift or get a second place and do the whole snowbird thing. So if you can also reach Brad if you think that you would be a good referral partner for him, bradbowie.com. Of course, you can find everything there and reach out. Brad, thank you so much for being on our show. Really appreciate all of we actually had a lot of people watching this live, which was very exciting for me, because normally we don't have a lot of live viewers, but I'm excited. So you must have a lot of fans out there. So thank you for everybody who stuck around this episode. Of course, thank you to Brad on behalf of our audience. Appreciate your time. You and your wife, really appreciate all your help there. You guys are amazing. And also on behalf of Brad and I, we want to say thank you to our audience. Like, thank you for watching to the end. Thank you for supporting us. And please tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that could benefit from hearing this. There's
Andrew.
well, you can't, if you're listening, you can't see this.
He didn't know it was live.
That's Brad's lovely wife. She just
No, he told me, but I didn't, put it all together. But you're watching.
yeah. Well, Brad's lovely.
Thank you, DJ.
Brad's,
Really appreciate it, and it was great to be on
and
here.
Brad and his lovely wife, just wonderful people, and a great partner to have on a referral side. Or, gosh, if I was looking to join a brokerage in the Quad Cities, I would be pounding down Brad's door. So that would be my recommendation for everyone. Please tell a friend. Stay listening to our show. Let us know if there's any people that we should be featuring in your local markets. We're always open to that. And please support our sponsors as well. They help keep the bills paid and our staff paid. So thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Brad. Thank you to our audience. We will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, Brad.
I appreciate you having me on here, and it's a great podcast, and I'm always listening. It's awesome.